Welcome to Stumbling Toward Genius. I'm your host, writing and creativity coach, Cynthia Morris. In this episode, you'll hear my secret trick that helped me master dedicated persistence while writing and publishing my novel. It took 13 years from idea to publication, and I'll share why. If you've ever despaired about how long it takes to finish a project, this episode is for you. Have you ever felt like a draft horse, plodding along step after step, forced to focus, blind to other exciting options? That's the very unsexy part of the creative process where we just have to suck up the work required. We don't hear about this very much, do we? Because, truth be told, if we knew about the work, the angst, and the uncertainty that awaits us, we would probably never take the plunge. Committing to a big project like writing a book, or starting a business, having kids. What does it take to develop the creative competency of dedicated persistence? I never knew how persistent I could be until I wrote my novel, Chasing Sylvia Beach. Before I launch into this story and the ones that follow, I want to make a note about compassionate regard. I think this is something we all need when working on our projects. It's all too easy to let the inner critic dominate our work. For some reason, a part of us thinks that bullying and heckling ourselves is the best way to get stuff done. But I have found that kindness, determination, and a compassionate regard do more to help me get my work out there. In her Emmy Award-winning show, Nanette, comedian Hannah Gadsby talks about her new refusal to malign and abuse herself just for the sake of a laugh. This flies against conventional comedy, which directs people to use themselves as an object of humor and even humiliation. But self-deprecation is not benign, Gadsby asserts, and I believe it. As I crafted these stories for Stumbling Toward Genius, I noticed one day that I was feeling like a failure in my work and my life. I'm not a failure, but it took me a second to realize that, it made sense. I had been focusing on my failures and challenges from the past 20 years. But I had made a commitment to myself while working on these stories, that I would hold myself and my foibles with a compassionate regard. Of course it took so long to write my novel. Of course I was terrified when launching my business. With this perspective, it was easier to tell the stories that I might prefer to keep hidden. So, as you create your works of genius, as you tell your stories, please hold yourself and your efforts with a compassionate and kind regard. If I had known what it would take to write and publish my novel, Chasing Sylvia Beach, I don't know that I would have done it. But when I started out, I didn't have the skills and tenacity that I acquired along the way. It took me 12 years to write, 17 drafts. Looking back, this seems like an impossibly long time. Years ago, when I was a bookseller at Capitol Hill Books in Denver, I came upon a book called Sylvia Beach and the Lost Generation, Literary Paris in the 20s and 30s. Sylvia was an American who moved to Paris in 1919 and opened a bookshop and lending library called Shakespeare and Company. As a young woman, I was looking for role models for how to live an unconventional life. Sylvia seemed to have done it. I could do it too. I envied her life. Surrounded by smart, bookish friends, she dedicated herself to books and the people who wrote them. I decided that the world, women specifically, needed to know about this bold, brave heroine. So I set to writing about her. I performed monologues. I penned a play and even a screenplay called Shakespeare's Daughter. And finally, in 1999, I alighted on the form of the novel. I loved novels, so why not write one? Well, I had no idea how to write a novel. Why would I? This was not something I was taught in school or at home. I had taken classes in writing and one novel writing class. Aside from that, I was winging it. I used books, two in particular, Donald Moss's writing the breakout novel, his workbook is especially helpful, and Christopher Vogler's The Writer's Journey. I also hired editors. What I realized is that we learn by doing. There's no way I could listen to a lecture or read a book and suddenly have the skills required to pull off a 90,000 word novel. Often people come to me because they think they have writer's block, that there's something wrong with them because they just can't get the words out. In many cases, though, it's simply a skill thing. They just don't have the skills yet. I'm like everyone, whittling away at my creative edge. During those 12 years and 17 drafts, I was learning my craft. You've probably heard about the 10,000 hours that are required to get good at something. That's 10,000 hours of dedicated practice, very specifically learning elements of craft, like how to build dramatic tension, how to write characters that readers care about, how to develop a story that's both personal and universal, or how to write a decent sex scene, for goodness sake. That is not easy. I know 17 drafts might sound disheartening, but I came to appreciate how much better each draft became. I hired editors. My friend David Hicks, as an editor, gave me excellent feedback. Sitting on my couch in Boulder, he started out with encouraging remarks. I felt like, yeah, this book was worth working on. He then showed me a pages long list of specific things that needed to be worked on. This was daunting, but his encouragement floated me toward the next revision. Each draft took a year or so to revise. One year, I got feedback from beta readers, aka friends. One described the book as a slog. A slog. Others said it needed lots of work. Submissions I made to agents came back with even less encouragement than that. The learning curve was as steep as the Boulder Flatirons. And though I did become a rock climber, that's another episode, vertical hikes are not my thing. The humble pie I learned to eat with a smile wasn't always tasty. I'm quick and I get things done with speed. I prefer to think that I'm a racehorse and not a draft horse. So this was a true challenge. I was becoming something that I wasn't before writing the novel. My novel was my passion project, meaning no one was paying me for the time and energy I was putting into it. If you're like me in the early aughts, it was all too easy to blow things off if no one's out there waiting. Add to that I didn't know what I was doing, and yeah, really easy to blow it off. Because, like you, my creative projects and dreams don't live in a vacuum. They live right there alongside my work life, and my personal life, and my health and fitness needs. 1999, when I was starting the novel, I was also becoming a coach. I started working with clients. I did the coach training. I learned how to juggle my different income streams. I fit book writing in here and there, but it was more of a trickle of focus than a steady stream I floated my book idea on. To be fair, in the 12 years that I wrote Chasing Sylvia Beach, I was developing things for my business. I wrote 5 other books. I launched writing workshops. I designed and led creativity workshops in France. Like you, I was busy doing work that helped me build my business and earn a living. That kind of takes priority, doesn't it? But somewhere in there, it became intolerable to keep shunting my book to the side with these completely valid survival excuses. For one, I believed in Sylvia Beach and her power as a role model. If I quaked with my own uncertainty about the book, I was solid in my faith in Sylvia. I also couldn't live with myself if I were coaching people to make time for their projects and I wasn't able to do the same. A core tenet of my business is that I will always take the same kind of risks that I ask my clients to take. I do not sit on the cushion of past successes and blithely tell others to go ahead, take your own risks. I am right there in the field with them, continually making and sharing works that scare me, like this podcast. So, this belief, this insistence that I be doing the work, got me off my comfort cushion and into the dedicated process of writing the novel. It wasn't easy. One sunny morning in Boulder, I walked along the creek path. This is hard, I thought. My mind was focused like a hound dog on how hard this was. Then something rose up in me and replied, yes, it's hard. So what? Don't focus on that. That's victim mode. And yeah, I thought, that's right. I don't want to be in victim mode. I want to be in heroine mode. I really just couldn't live with my heroine Sylvia Beach every day and operate as a victim. So I focused on Sylvia and my commitment to get her story out. I focused on my love of learning. I dove deep into the craft of writing. I leaned into my value of curiosity. What would happen in the story? What would happen to me and my life after publishing the book? Our values are a compass for what matters to us most. When we are doing the things that we care about that reflect our values, we feel alive. Even if the work is difficult, our values can guide us. Our values can save us from victim mode, and our values can really help us to tune into why it matters to do what we're doing. My values are my secret weapon for when things get difficult. I can always ask myself, what value am I honoring by doing this thing? And then it's clear almost immediately the value that lights me up to do what I'm doing. Aside from the learning curve and aside from other life obligations, the truth is writing takes time. It is a slow medium. Despite the speed with which we can share our writing, doing the actual writing always seems to take longer than we want. This has been true for every single client and student I have worked with in 20 years. It still takes me hours to write an article, an essay. People often come to me wanting to make a living as a writer. They're starting pretty much from zero on a craft level. I don't want to belittle anyone's dream, but would any other professional expect to be paid in year one? An architect? A doctor? A lawyer? The problem with writing is we're all taught to write. So we know how to put words down. But then there's the craft. How you craft a story or an essay or a poem is a whole other layer than just being able to write a thank you note. I invite patience. I invite the apprentice perspective. When I first committed to writing, I gave myself 5 years. 5 years to write without it having to be good or published. 5 years to explore, to discover and learn, to apprentice. I tried every medium. I took classes. I began teaching classes. And at the end of that 5 years, I delved deeper into the apprenticeship of writing a novel. My values, my love of learning, and my commitment to the deeper reason for writing the book pulled me through all those years. I was humbled over and over again. But whatever it took, I knew this book was going to get out into the world. Because my commitment to sharing Sylvia's story was always, always bigger than my fears or limitations. My goal had been to publish the book by age 40. I published it at age 45. I'll share more about the self-publishing experience in an upcoming episode. If I had known that it would take 13 years to bring this book to life, would I have done it? I don't know. Here's what I don't want to tell you. After all that, it took a while to get my writing chops back. I felt like the novel took a piece out of me. Recently, I asked myself, what piece was that? What piece did I lose? And while I haven't yet come up with an answer, here's what I suspect to be true. Writing novels may not be my genius zone. I love reading novels, but writing them, that might be better left to others. That doesn't mean I can't write other things, and I do. But even though Chasing Sylvia Beach is set up to have a sequel, it might not be me that writes it. This project made me more persistent than I was before. I never would have thought I could stay with something for that long. the dedicated persistence I cultivated while writing my novel has served me in so many other projects. Assignment time. This week's creative competency is dedicated persistence. I used my inherent values to build a new competency. What about you? When you're working on a project, what helps you connect with your absolute must for doing it? Why must you do this thing? And what values help you stay with the work when everything else in you says, run away and go hide under a rock? What values are you expressing in your current project? I believe that the projects we finish are the projects that are deeply connected to our motivation, to our values, and to who we are and what we want for the world. If you're working on a project that's not connected deeply to your essence, it might make sense that it's not going where you want it to go. Head over to originalimpulse.com/podcast to download this week's assignment. Email me or leave a comment with insights you glean or actions you take as a result of the assignment. You'll find my contact info at originalimpulse.com. Remember that the competencies you acquire while working on one project are completely applicable to any other project and to life itself. There's so many times when dedicated persistence is required, and many people say that persistence is really the number one thing you need to be successful as a creative person. Thank you for listening to Stumbling Toward Genius. I hope this episode has helped you find your way toward your own genius, that you bravely take on your creative projects no matter how much you stumble or how scary it is. Until next time, creative genius, keep making.
Salut, it's Xavier. Just in from band practice. I heard this episode. I had to come and add a little word. I want to tell you, I love this episode, but what you didn't say, you did not even talk about the love. I cannot believe you did not bring the love. I mean, what is the point of doing any of these creative projects if it's not about something you love and something you care about, and that you bring the love, and it's really the love that keeps you going. So I just had to come in and add my little 2 cents there, my 2 centimes. Alors, I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you later.